Now, what we're going to talk about today is a famous hadith of Zara. This is a famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It was not even from the Prophet, it was from Sayyidah Aisha with the Messenger, peace be upon him. Sayyidah Aisha is telling a story of the Prophet to the Messenger, peace be upon him. And in this time that the Prophet used to sit with her every night. So his sunnah, the Prophet's sunnah with his wives, is something called musamara. Musamara is the concept that the Prophet is sitting with your spouse at the end of the night after Isha. So the Prophet used to only do a limited number of things after Isha. Well, there's a practical reason and there's a spiritual reason. So it is part of our deen that after Isha be limited the things that we do. It's not like makruh or haram, but the Prophet used to only do either teach if people needed to learn, or he used to deal with the affairs of the ummah with Abu Bakr and Omar, or he used to sit with his wives. Okay. And so that's what the Messenger, peace be upon him, used to do. And well, if you think about it, that's also what the Messenger used to do all the time, right? So when they limited to that, like, what else was the Prophet doing? What could you do at night? You can't even do anything at night, right? So, but there is also hadith that bring your children in when it gets dark. Another mention of that, the dark is for the shayateen. You know, shayateen come out in the dark. So we're actually not encouraged to spend a lot of time up late at night.
In Tarim, they always go home after Maghrib, right?
In Tarim? I don't know what their actual lifestyle is, but the students of knowledge, they review between Maghrib and Isha. After Isha, they have a few minutes. It's almost like musamara. Well, when I was there, that was like 20 years ago, 22 years ago when I was there. So you'd have to ask someone who'd been more there, more recently. But when I was there, there was a juice shop. And what you would do is after Isha, you would just have some juice for maybe 20, 30 minutes with the brothers there, and then you'd go to sleep, right? There wasn't much activity, and they didn't allow much. There wasn't much to do. Even if you left the building, what was there to do? Right. So I think that today people don't really do much after Isha besides scroll on their phone. And that's a really terrible habit for your sleep. I've talked to a lot of people that their sleep habits are just in a disaster because of the cell phone, right? And because of the computers. They're just on it all night. And but the Prophet's habit, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was to sit with his wives and they would talk. So one of these things is that he would listen. Right? He would just listen to whatever they wanted to speak about, and it wasn't always a matter of seriousness or deen. And this hadith indicates that because it's actually pretty funny that this Zara talks about this hadith of Zara. Sayyidah Aisha tells the Prophet a story, and this story is about a woman or 11 women and their husbands. Okay, each one. I guess this is like they're sitting complaining about their husband. Now, by the way, this is like, I guess this happened, but it's not halal. It's not allowed for a woman to go complaining about her husband to other men, unless she needs it for like therapy. It's also not allowed for a man to talk about his wife to other women, right? To other men, even his brothers. You can't say like, "Oh, my wife went this and she wears this and did that." That's her like a aura in a sense. Her privacy is like a aura. You're not allowed to do this. So Zara says, my husband was Abu Zara, and how can I praise Abu Zara? He made my ears bow with jewels. In other words, the earrings that she wore were so heavy. Okay. He made my sides full of fat. In other words, like her ribs don't show anymore because she's not skinny. She has food. So he's a provider. He's praising him for being a provider. He kept me so happy and contented that due to self-admiration and haughtiness, I thought I was virtuous. Like he fattened me up so much. In other words, with his provisions and his whatever he provided and everything, that she got to her head. She's basically admitting that it sort of got to my head. He found me from such a poor home. In other words, I was a poor woman, and I lived with hardship. I only owned a few goats. From there, he brought me into such a prosperous family. We own horses now, camels, and oxen for plowing, and gardeners. And we own all types of wealth. Okay. Besides this, Now, some people think that this is not important. It is important. Comfort makes people happy. Stuff makes people happy. Why did the Prophet ﷺ say, "Tahadu tahabbu"? Give gifts, you'll love one another. Tahadu is the action. Tahabbu is the result. You will love one another. So people do love each other through material gifts. It's a symbol, and it's also human nature does love other clay things. We're made of clay. We're made of matter. We love other material things, right? That's a material. I guess it comes from the word matter, right? So we're made of that. So we love that. The angels, for example, don't love that. They love what they're made out of, light. So their nourishment is dhikr. The nourishment of angels is dhikr. Okay. So if you give gifts to people, it doesn't mean that they're not righteous people or they're all materialistic. Tell me something. If some guy gave you $10,000, you're not going to love him a little bit more? You're gonna, right? Only question is, like, we should be in control of our feelings towards material wealth, and that our love for deen and akhirah should be greater. That's really the only thing that the Prophet ﷺ brought. He didn't bring socialism. He didn't bring like Marxism and this or asceticism of the Christians. He simply brought that you should love the akhirah more. And when some Sahaba experienced spirituality, they so loved it so much more, they simply just ignored the dunya. Examples of Abdullah bin Amr ibn al-As. When he tasted the spirituality that the Prophet brought as a young man, he didn't believe or have a doctrine or something that this stuff was bad. He just lost interest in it. Like, this is so much better. This spirituality is so much better. I don't want a distraction from that. He basically stopped eating, praying all night. His wife complained. And his wife said, he prays all night. In other words, I don't have a companion in my bed. And he fasts all day. I can't even eat with him in the morning, right? Yeah. We can't have breakfast. And he's up all night. So the Prophet ﷺ advised, this was Uthman ibn Mad'un, the Sahabi Uthman ibn Mad'un, his wife.
I think it was Amr ibn As.
Abdullah ibn Amr al-As?
Abdullah, yeah.
Him too?
I think it was him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then the Prophet ﷺ said, I fast and I break my fast. I sleep and I pray. In other words, because your wife, and in another hadith, one Sahabi said to another, he said, your body has a haqq over you, your family has a haqq over you, right? So these things have haqq, meaning a right. They have a right over you.
This Sahabi had to be reined in multiple times. So there was that with his wife. There was also the hadith about fast 3 days, then fast every other day. That was him too. The hadith about the Quran, like don't recite it more than every 3 days. That's also him.
Sayyidina Abdullah bin Amr ibn al-As, because he tasted the right thing. And when he tasted that in his heart, no material thing could ever compare to it. Like, you would never sacrifice that for a material thing. That's what Imam al-Haddad says when he asks, how do I know my dhikr has been accepted or that I'm doing dhikr properly? He said, the least is that you would never trade the taste of that for anything. Right? And that was what they tasted in their heart. So it's not the Prophet didn't have to go preach anti-dunya. He didn't have to preach it to these Sahaba, maybe to others. But as soon as they tasted the sweetness of this dhikr, of the ibadah and of the deen, they ignored the dunya. So some people, remember we said this Thursday, some people, they have to be told, go and take some dunya, right? They have to be told to. And others, you have to warn them against the dunya. Now, so material thing has an impact on people. We can't deny that. And this woman, she's just on the fitrah, and she's like, I'm so happy, I love this man because my dunya is really good. But now, if your dunya is good, but you're mean or you're a jerk, you would still hate the person, right? So this is why she says, after all of this, he was extremely good-natured, right? So, well, what is the good nature here? Now, the ulama, they found this valuable because these things are good. These are good qualities. Why was he of a good nature? He did not criticize me for anything that I did. He didn't criticize me. Like, he didn't say, oh, this is you're not dressed nicely, your cooking is this, the house is a mess. He didn't criticize. Okay, for whatever. I know some people get triggered cooking, like as if this is, yes, most people, women cook. Like, are we going to go so far from the fitrah and from actual lived life and pretend and then monitor our speech for, by the way, a group of people who don't exactly have the most exemplary family lives, right? You would not want to trade your family life with theirs. The people who want us to monitor our language and our tongues and ignore this reality that women, wives in homes, tend to like cooking for their families. Guys in homes tend not to, right? And they don't do a good job at it. Have things changed? Is my generation now like I'm not even old, right?
At least that's not been my experience.
that hasn't been your experience.
Like, I mean, I wouldn't give my wife a Pop-Tart. Like, I mean,
wait, your mom in your household, she not enjoy cooking for the family?
Yeah, but my mom is different though. Like my family situation is really different. Don't take that as an example.
This is not a private thing. I think maybe it's too private. Your family is so far off. I'm not saying what she's obligated. She's not obligated to do anything. Doesn't she enjoy it?
That's really what it is.
She enjoys it.
It's very much. It's like you're always going to be fed, even when you don't want to be fed. That's less important. You know?
If I said, when I sit with my mom to eat, my mom, same thing with my wife. Sometimes I don't praise the food. She says, "Oh, you like it? Take some more." Right? Right?
I think this is our favorite.
That's when I was young, right? When I was young, that's how it was with my mom. Right? Nowadays, if I go into the kitchen and I'm moving around, it's like I'm in someone else's backyard. I'm like, shoot away, right? This is my zone. If I put a plate together, I might get told something, right? I might get told something. So I'm saying this because just the fact that we mentioned the word that he doesn't criticize her cooking or her dressing. We can't go so far from the fitrah and actual live life that cooking and wives and women cannot even come together. What's wrong with it, right? What's bad about it, right? We're not saying it's obligatory or it's the only thing that defines their existence, right? We're not saying any of this nonsense. Anyway, the people who are criticizing this, I don't know about your family life, and I probably wouldn't want to live it, right? Because is there even a family life, right? Most of the people who preach this stuff, they're single, right? They're single. So I'm not interested in what you have to say about the subject because you haven't lived it. Anyway, there are a lot of people, they're involved with family discussions and children who don't have family and don't have children. You ever notice, like, why are the transgenders always so interested in kids? Why are the gays so interested in Disney? Your lifestyle doesn't result in kids. Why do you want to deal with our kids? Right? I'll tell you why. Because that lifestyle is going to die off, right, with you. So you have to go and fish for other people's kids to recruit. It's your lifestyle, right? Right or wrong? Isn't that it? It's because they're that way of living. You don't have kids. What's your business with other people's kids? Why are you guys, 27-year-old guy, going working in a kindergarten or a library reading books to kids when you don't have kids? That's like creepy. If a single guy did that and he was straight, we'd have an issue with that. But when they do it in a library and they're dressed up like this, I mean, I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm referring to one guy. He does this. There's a lot of guys who do this. They dress up basically as completely like drag queens, basically, and they go to the library, and the library welcomes him for diversity, and he's reading a book on this topic to kids. Your lifestyle doesn't produce kids. What's your interest? Because deep down, your whole philosophy ends when you die. You don't pass it on to anybody else. If I went around to other people's kids and talking to other people's kids in the masjid, that would be like an alarm bell should go off, right? I talk to my kids, and maybe if my kid has a friend, I'll talk to that kid. And maybe if I know them as family friend, the max, assalamu alaikum, and a little nice jacket, nice shirt, haven't seen you, blah, blah, blah. Maximum, out loud, in front of the people, right? Stay away from other people's kids.
These libraries invite niqabis who like to cook to
that's true, right? That's true. Like where's the diversity, right? Why is diversity only like one thing? So anyway, all this was a little rant because we're like triggered if cooking is mentioned with wives and women. Okay, I'm sorry you're triggered. Actually, I'm not sorry you're triggered. Be triggered. Okay? I'm serious. We are getting, our language is so policed, so far beyond normal everyday live life and fitrah that, you know what? I don't need to do this. I don't need to. I'm not doing it. I'm not allowing my language to be policed like this. You don't like it? Don't like it. All right. Next topic. He says here, okay, that they had so much wealth. He was good natured. He never criticized anything. And if I did something wrong, he didn't scold me. Okay. He didn't scold me. Okay. Because now that's something in our urf, we wouldn't scold our wives in our country, in our urf, meaning our custom. It's almost like an equal relationship in the sense of it's almost like your friends, right? What is your friends with a little bit more, but you don't, there's not this almost like a daughter relationship. Whereas I think that in the old world, even in some places still now, I think it's mother is above you. Your sister is probably an equal to you. Your daughter is, of course, under you as a father in terms like a subordinate. And your wife is something in the middle. She's not even like equal to you in many cultures. And she's not your daughter. She's actually a little bit in the middle. And it's almost like he is in many of these cultures. And apparently this is one of them where like it's very clear, the hierarchy between the two.
I think that actually makes like things like polygamy more socially acceptable.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you're equals,
Mhm.
right, then it's like polygamy becomes a problem now.
Yeah.
If we're friends, right, and then you can have an extra friend.
Yeah.
With a little extra.
Yeah.
Why can't I have an extra friend with a little extra?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it doesn't fly. Power dynamics are different in every culture.
Yeah.
And I think the relationship in those cultures or at those times was more of benefaction and patronage than it was. Like,
Totally.
you know,
Totally. You're saving them.
Yeah, exactly.
If your dad died in an old culture, who do you have? An uncle, a brother? So the husband now he's taking over physically. Now I've said this many times. We have no use anymore as husbands. It's true. Like our use has been cut down to like all abstract things: companionship, emotional support, a little bit of like moral support, help out with a little bit of things here and there. But the actual use that of, let's say, the actual function in our physical material lives has been lost. And that's why it's frustrating. Like your use is, you're not that useful. She can go on without you. This is the truth. Physically speaking, maybe not emotionally, and she likes you. Emotionally, she likes you or as companionship, but physically speaking, most women, they just go on, right? And that's why there's an issue with marriage. That's why marriages, a lot of times they just don't work because there's actually no need to make it work. Whereas in the past, if there's meat on the table, I either hunted that, slaughtered it, right? In the old days. That's something that you wouldn't want to do, right? If you're the wife would not want to do that. She wouldn't maybe be able to do that. Go out in the woods for 5 hours with my bow and arrow, waiting for the deer, right?
That's another thing you're gonna get canceled for.
What, eating a deer?
No, they have to be out there with the bow now.
So back in or slaughtering a cow. Do you know what a headache it is to slaughter a cow? Even the guys, they don't do it right anymore. Do you ever see the video in Egypt when they tried to slaughter the cow?
When they pull the legs?
Well, they tried to slaughter a cow in an alley next to a window, right? And they go up to the cow and they try to slaughter the guy. And the cow bucks and he jumps into the woman's house. He jumps into the woman's house, right? All you hear is glass and screaming. That's all you hear. Literally, the cow is half slaughtered, right? He jumps into the house, right? Into the window. And back in those days, or not back in those days, this is last year, last Ramadan, or Eid al-Adha. In Upper Egypt, south part of Egypt, the house is just, the window is just a wooden panel. You've seen these before, right? It's just a wooden panel. He breaks through the wooden panels. He's bleeding, gushing into the living room, right? And the poor woman is screaming her lights out, right? And the cow, because he's being slaughtered, right? He jumps, an amazing jump into the house.
The cow jumped over the moon.
The cow jumped over the moon. Okay, this is the real thing. He jumps into the house, and all you hear is the woman screaming, kids running like crazy, and it must be so fun for the kids, right? And then you hear the furniture. Right? They destroyed the whole house because that cow is bleeding everywhere. He's going to bleed out eventually, right? But that's going to be blood everywhere Okay. So it's a headache to slaughter a cow. All right. So what use do we have? Okay. Physically speaking.
Maliki Click said he brought down a buck 8 years ago with a
Wow.
compound bow.
With a bow and arrow, he brought down a buck?
Took him 3 days of tracking and setting up for the kill.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I used to sell the scents and everything. Most women, they don't even want to deal with the scents. You got bottled urine everywhere.
Oh, it's a mess, man. It is a mess. And then all that stuff about security. Like we have such secure borders now. Back in the day, you didn't have secure borders. Crime was so easy back in the day. Before the FBI and before fingerprinting and all that stuff and all the technology that came in the time of J. Edgar Hoover. And now with DNA testing, you can't get away with anything. And now with the tracking, how do you get away with anything? You have to be a nerd who does cyber crimes, right? You can't get away with anything. Everything's recorded. You're tracked.
You sound like an old school criminal.
It's terrible.
Take the good old days.
In the good old days, mafia used to get away with murder just so easily. Okay. And the cops would never keep up. There were guys, really simple. You kill a guy, you throw the gun in the river. He's never going to find it. The cop will never find it, right? And I'm thinking to myself, that's it? That's all it took back in the day? Even if they found the gun, they can't fingerprint it. So things were not secure. You had to have security, right? So what did we talk about? About security and food. That used to be a guy's job, and it's not anymore. So when I come home from work, my wife comes home from work, I think to myself, she works in the Islamic school, okay? So I know what that kind of work is. In a sense, you're dealing with people all day long. Very similar to what we're doing here. Actually, this is way more relaxed. I don't know how she tolerates. Parents, they become different people. Yeah. When you deal with people's kids, they're different. Like if I ever dealt with your kid, you'd be different. You'd be like way more cautious. I'm annoyed by those parents. You know what my dad used to do? When he used to take me to a teacher, to a soccer coach, he said, here he is. The skin is yours, the bone is mine. That's what he used to say. That was the old thing, right? That means there would never be a time that I would be able to get my parents to side with me against the authority figure.
Yes. Oh my
God.
God.
Would never happen, right?
100% my experience as well.
It would never, ever, ever, ever happen, right? I don't care what happens. The authority figure is going to be, I guess authority figures got so abusive now that people don't trust anyone anymore. I guess that's what happened.
People just have a problem with authority nowadays, period.
Yeah, authority, period. I think that's what it is.
It's hierarchies, social hierarchies, like work-based hierarchies. Why are certain people making more than everyone else? Yeah. Economic hierarchies. Yeah.
They go on and they whine and whine and whine. And I'm thinking to myself, man, some of these people, they really become a different creature when it comes to their kids. Okay. So, but anyway, point being, when we come home, I'm thinking to myself, like physically speaking, we physically did the same thing. She's as tired as I am. Whereas back in that time, if you went out and you farmed all day or you went trading all day, you physically did not have the same day as your wife. Things were different, right? So today, it's pretty much physically, you had the same exact level of tiredness, all right? Unless she doesn't work. Okay. Now, next thing. And even today, when a woman didn't work in the past, like she had neighbors, right? Yeah. There's plenty of socialization. If you're in the suburbs today and you don't do anything, right, and your kids are at school, I always wonder, like, what you can potentially get really lonely, potentially, right? Yeah. It's very different. Anyway, here we go. Next thing she does. I sleep until late in the morning. There we go. That's the answer, right? What do they do? This is what Zara says. I sleep late into the morning and no one is allowed to wake me up. Wow. That's why she loves her husband, right? I would love him too if I lived like this. I got money. I got food. No one says a word to me and I sleep all day. Okay. Food is so abundant that when I fill my own stomach, okay, I just leave it. Okay. And it never gets finished, right? There's always leftovers. Okay. That is Zara talking about Abu Zara. Now, the mother of Abu Zara, the mother-in-law. All right. Here we have discussion about the mother-in-law. In what manner can I praise her? Her huge bowls were always full. In other words, She's a very spacious mother-in-law, a very generous mother-in-law. Many mother-in-laws, I don't know what happens to them. They get jealous for their kid. Okay. I mean, I'm not a mother-in-law, so I wouldn't know. Her house was very spacious. The house is vast. She was very rich. And according to the habit of women, all right, she was not a miser. So she was a nice, gentle mother-in-law. That's why the son is nice and gentle too. By the vastness of the house, all right, visitors were always entertained. So that means we have company. There's sometimes you could be rich, you could be a nice guy, but you could be a bore. You have no friends. And the family life is terrible. Ryan, were you going to say something, by the way? Okay. It looks like you had your finger on the button. Says here that, but they always had guests. In other words, they were social, because you could actually have a lot of good stuff going on in your life, but your life is boring. The family's just really, really boring. And by the way, those people who create the stable environment, they tend to that. They tend not to be. Now, I guess there could be in the middle people who are very stable, but also social at the same time. All right, let's continue on. He says here, or she says, now the son of Abu Zara. So she married this man, and he had a son. How can I praise him? He was a light upon light. He was so thin and skinny, okay, that his ribs would show like branches. Okay. A side of a lamb was enough to fill his stomach. That means he barely ate. Okay. He ate from a small plate, and he was not demanding. Because stepson relationship is a relationship, by the way. The stepmother is a type of mother, and the stepson is a type of son. It's not the same as the biological, but in the sharia and in what we consider, it is a type of mother. You have to respect her. Yes, she's not your biological mother, but you have to respect her. She's not a regular old woman. Likewise, the stepson, she's not a regular person. There's a relationship. You cannot marry. Therefore, there's a special relationship there, even in respect. Not just that you can't marry. In respect, in treatment, in love. There should be a special relationship there between step-parents and stepchildren. It says here, he was very simple in his eating habits. In other words, his eating habits, neither did he eat so much that the house is never filled. Do you ever have like families where the fridge is just backspaced deleted every day? It's like you put the food in and it's deleted. There is a family there. I had four boys. My best friends were 4 boys, right? There was the mom and the grandma. And that fridge, when it would get stocked, it would be literally empty by half the day, right? It was an army. And it was the mom and the grandma, may Allah have mercy upon her, right? The mom is still alive. I think the grandmother's still alive too. But subhanAllah, when each one of the guys would bring their friends over because they had no sisters. So all the guys could go there and not worry about anyone wearing hijab, right? All you had to worry about is just the mom and the grandma. And the grandma was older, so she would just hug us, everything. She's older. She's allowed to do that. They was like cooking for an army. It was like a restaurant. Vats of food. Vats, right? And they would say, what is this? An army, right? Because each one of the brothers would bring his friends over in the summertime, and we would it was a frat house, right? With all the good connotations. I don't know if there are any good connotations, but meaning that it was a guy's house. The dad would come home from work, look at the scene of all these kids, and just go straight upstairs. He would every day do the same thing. He'd take a nap. He'd come down, he worked in New York, hour and a half commute, work New York, hour and a half back. Okay. Come down in his PJs, basically, have his dinner, then go back upstairs, then change again. Okay. Sit down for tea, and then go down to the masjid for Isha. Hang out with the brothers there in the masjid for Isha, listen to a talk or something, come back, sit again on the couch with his wife and his mom. And then that was it. But when we were there, we literally took over the house because it was the only house that we could go to. And there was no girls, right? Yeah. No sisters that we had to worry about. So we would just tear up the food in that house. But she's saying now, he was not demanding. Okay. He was not demanding in his eating habits. So then she said, He slept in a small place. In other words, he's not demanding in his space. He doesn't like take over the house. Like some people, they take over the house. It's like their stuff is everywhere. No, he only kept a small part of the house. All right. He ate like a soldier, meaning he didn't require spices. And I know some guys, they used to tell me, we don't ever eat leftovers. I was like, what? Like, I don't know about your guys' family, but we would cook, let's say, and that food would be like maybe 2-3 days. Then we'd cook something else. We'd eat that for 2-3 days. I think that's how all households operate. You don't cook every single day. But this one Egyptian guy, I know, he says, in our house, we don't eat leftovers. It's like, what are you, kings or something? Allah, this is bizarre. Okay, next. In the same manner, he ate simple food, but befitting a warrior, 2 or 3 pieces of meat was enough. Now, the daughter of Abu Zara, how can she be praised? Now, she has a stepdaughter, too. Now, you got a stepmom, or a mother-in-law, a stepdaughter, a stepson. This is a recipe for problems. But she's so happy. Why? Because the character of this family. All right, what about her? She obeys her mother and her father. So there's another wife, right? She's a good daughter. She obeys her mother and her father, right? That's another word I guess you're supposed to never say. Obey, obey. Well, tough luck. She obeys her mother. I like kids who obey their parents, personally speaking. If I say you need to sleep at 9 o'clock, there's a reason I said that, right? So sleep at 9 o'clock. If you don't sleep at 9 o'clock, you're causing me to exert more effort, right, than I want to. There's a price for that, right? If I say finish your homework by 5 o'clock, there's a reason, because we have order. 5 o'clock, then we go to practice, then we come back, we have dinner, or vice versa. There's a reason for all this stuff. Okay. And eventually they should be able to do it on their own. But there's reasons sometimes, like when you're raising somebody up, there's reasons why you tell them to do certain things. It's not just for fun and for the sake of, especially when you have a lot of kids. When you have a lot of kids, you have to be like a symphony orchestra person or a military person where I need to do 5 things here today and I have 90 minutes to do them. If one of these kids is delayed 5 minutes, it throws the whole thing off, which means I'm not going to be to the masjid on time, which means the students are going to be waiting. Okay. So I need 5 things to get done in 90 minutes. So if I tell you, I'm going to pick you up, you need to be at the door at this hour, literally at the door. You can't wait. Firstly, I'm taking you. You're lucky I'm taking you. I don't have to take you to practice. I don't have to take you anywhere. We have to remember that. Parent is not a servant. So all this stuff, when you say to be obeyed, there's a reason, right? Go to any CEO and ask him if he doesn't like to be obeyed, right? By his go to any manager. They might not say that word, but they know it and they want it, right? So sometimes when you give an order, it needs to be followed, and there's no problem in that. Like this is again one of those silly and ridiculous things that were politically correct that we can't say, but in actual real world, go to any institution. Are you telling me that nobody's saying that this is what you have to do to anybody else? Of course, it's ridiculous. Everyone is saying that. From the military to a corporation to a hospital, you have to do this. Your shift is from 5 a.m. To 3 p.m. That's how life is. Why is it when it comes to the household, everything has to be flipped upside down? All right, next thing. She obeys her mother. She is healthy. She's fat and healthy. Fat meaning like she's not skinny, because that back in those days you're always poor, right? Everyone's poor. So to not have your ribs showing was a sign of wealth. Okay, and a jealousy for the second wife. The second wife feels jealous on her excellence. Among the Arabs, it is desirable that a man be thin and tall because it shows he could do things, and it's desirable that a woman have her ribs not show. Of course, this is just talking about like what is healthy in those days. All right, and what about the servant girl of Abu Zara? Now, Abu Zara has a servant girl. She never gossips about her house affairs, because if you have people working in the house, they go and they gossip about what happened in the house. She did not even eat without permission. In other words, she didn't use the food without permission. One time we had a babysitter. MashaAllah, she would feed our kid, right? And we would have trouble. You know how it is feeding a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old? It's like playing games. You got to make sure he eats this much of food, right, for his lunch. This container of food. We came back. Like, actually, we would always have them like downstairs, and then my wife would work upstairs on her dissertation or something, whatever. And we came one day. My wife comes down, and the baby has eaten everything. The container's empty. She's like, wow, she's good. She knows how to feed the kid. Next day, same thing. Third day, walks by, sees the lady eating the food. Right? It was a girl, and she was a young girl, and not young, but she's like probably early 20s. She's eating it herself. He's like, oh, well, if he doesn't eat it, I'll just eat it. She was fired, right? Fired. Okay, next. She never gossiped, and she didn't eat the food of the house without permission. She did not let the house become dirty and untidy. She kept it clean. In other words, she did her job. Okay. And the days were passing wonderfully. Right? Zara is loving her life. One morning, while the milk was being churned, Abu Zara left the house. He found a woman with 2 children playing with pomegranates. Okay? They're playing with pomegranates. Okay. Oh, no. Sorry about that. Not pomegranates. The pomegranate here is in reality that he says either that it is literally playing with pomegranates or breastfeeding. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. Ryan is falling off the chair. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. There's
a lot of metaphors.
There's a lot of metaphors in this hadith. Okay. Okay. And I ended up getting divorced. Okay. And he married her instead. Okay. I was divorced because of that. Okay. And the new wife would have a greater regard for him. Like he loved her more. Okay. He divorced me. I married another man, another chief, a chief and a nobleman. He was a prince and a soldier. He showered me with many gifts. Okay. And from each type of animal, we ate. We ate camel, cow, goat, lamb. And he presented to me everything and said, eat as much as you wish. Okay. And send as much food, all right, to your family as you wish. Okay. If I add up all his good qualities, he will not excel the little thing that Abu Zara bestowed upon me. Okay. The fact is, she says, if I add up all this second guy's good qualities, all right, then 2, he will not excel the little thing that Abu Zara bestowed upon me. In other words, even though he was so good to me, there's something special about Abu Zara that I loved. Something special about Abu Zara, okay, that nobody could match. And that's what love is. The Prophet ﷺ said, you can't control your heart, right? You could check off all the boxes for a person, all you want, okay? And still, nonetheless, you would love someone else more. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, take us to account by our actions, not by our heart. The Prophet ﷺ listened to this story from Sayyidah Aisha. He said to me, I am to you like Abu Zara was to Zara, except I will never divorce you. Right. So that is how the Prophet, peace be upon him, did musamara with Sayyidah Aisha. Means sit down and talk and listen and listen to different things. And then he made sure always to reassure his love for her. Okay. And yes, so the Prophet used to reassure his wife of his love for her. جزاكم الله خير folks. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. اللهم صل صلاة كاملة وسلم سلاما تاما على سيدنا محمد الذي تنحل به العقد وتنفرج به الكرب، تقضى به الحوائج، تنال به الرغائب، وحسن الخواتم، ويستسقى الغمام بوجهه الكريم، وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. نسأل الله العفو والعافية والسلامة والرحمة لنا ولجميع أمة الإسلام ومن أعاننا على هذا البث المباشر. وصلى الله وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم، والحمد لله رب العالمين.